Okay, afternoon everyone. So my name is Andrew and I come from Malaysia. So as we were chatting just now, some of the Polish guys was like, oh, you're the first Malaysian I've ever met, all right? It's a beautiful country, just a quick plug for Malaysia. All right, so I'm going to talk to you a bit about what the future looks like with gamification, and not just gamification, but in the world that we live around today. Now, when we talk about fashion, this is the latest version of Google Glass, right? It's back available again, right? You can buy it, right? And what it does is it gives you on the demand info. You're walking down the street, it'll tell you stuff, right? Pretty much what you can do with the phone, but right now embedded to a glass. And bottom is a Apple Watch Series 5. Series 4 is able to do this. It can read electrocardiograms. When you fall, it has a fall detection system, and it can contact emergency services, and it saves quite a number of lives before, right? So this is what's been happening in the fashion world, right? So these are what we call wearables, right? And of course, with mobility, we've got Tesla and a lot of other companies now coming up with self-driving cars, right? Where it's a lot more accurate, and humans are a bit more safe, so they claim, right, statistically, right? And of course, you also have cars that now behave like phones, right? Where you don't really like the suspension, you want it to be softer, right? You tell it, and it uploads itself across the night, and the next morning the suspension is all that much better because it can do diagnostics and updates, right? And if we talk about retail, interestingly, one of the very first few e-commerce platforms that made it big, Amazon, eBay. So these guys have been at the forefront of e-commerce, but now you see them buying up or going back into the physical retail space, right? So you have Amazon Go, where it's basically a manless or womanless store where everything is with sensors, and you take things up and it moves by itself, and you can just check out by yourself. And they have also bought Whole Foods, right? Whole Foods in the US, one of the largest grocery chain in the US. So you wonder, why are they doing this? Because, they've made it in e-commerce. Why are you going back to the physical sphere, right? And of course, in retail now, a lot of smart mirrors and things like that, they're happening. So what is the point talking about all this, and where is gamification going, right? So the future, if you haven't thought about it by now, is not living in the physical world, nor is it living in the digital world. The future is all about convergence, right? Bringing two worlds together, right? And in the sense of gamification, that's where it's going to reside as well. So I just want to take a quick time to just walk through the evolution of learning and serious games. Now, to the corporate clients, and I want to say this because there are a lot of gamification experts here, to the corporate client, they don't really care what terminology, what frameworks we use, and how which part of things we subscribe to. What they really want to know is whether it works or not, right? So there'll be some definitions here that you might agree or disagree. We're not here to talk about that, all right? So when we first started off, basically in terms of learning, there was the classroom learning, right? And its value proposition was it's trainer-led. So the experience and expertise of the trainer is good. So if you got a great trainer, it's a great experience. If you got a lousy trainer, you got a lousy experience. And you always want that particular trainer, right? So for consultants, it's pretty much the same thing, right? And in terms of gamification, the very primitive, or rather first versions of it was just gamification of activities. And you've been to a lot of these team building activities, and it's an egg drop, 5-10 minute type of thing, and then we debrief it, right? Then, interestingly, we moved on to the next part, because if it's always dependent on the trainer, we want something that's more standardized, right? So that's where digital came about, all right? And it's what we call content-led, all right? And the value proposition is very simple: standardization, self-paced, and content delivery at scale. So there's a video, or some quizzes, and you can deliver it at scale. Now, most LMS generally, this is what we call gamification of process. You do something, you earn some points, right? So, and you get a dashboard, you get a scoreboard. In that sense, that's how most LMS are generally. Of course, now it moves on a bit, but that's where we were, right? So we started off with being trainer-led, then we moved on being to content-led. And of course, the next wave was what we call census-led, where it was very much experiential in nature. And the value proposition is very simple, right? You want a differentiated experience, and you want it to be practical. So you can practice, and it's differentiated in experience itself. So you would have the experience is the learning itself, right? So that's where it went on in that sense. But of course, where do we go from here? Because most corporates would tell you, just because you finish an online course, just because you use the AR tool or VR tool, just because you did all that, that does not equate to business results. And at the end of it, when we talk about learning, especially with corporates, all they're interested is with business results, right? So if lecture-based gets the business results, then that's the way they'll go, right? So this brings us to the next phase, right, where we call gamification of habits, right, where the value proposition is where it's psychological-led, right, and it's all about habit building and business results. Okay, so we've spent more than 40,000 hours understanding adult learning and gamification. So these are just some of our clients that we have, and we've been very privileged to be working with them because they give us great feedback on what works and what doesn't work. And what we found is what we're going to share with you based on the feedback from all these clients, right? Now, we want to understand a bit about behavioral learning and the future of serious games within the context of corporate learning, right, and adult learning. So when we talk about learning in the corporate sphere, whether it's C-level, so we do a lot of C-level right down to the frontliners, right, there are three things that always impedes, that always stop business results, right? So these are the three things. So the first feedback is, I can't remember, right? It's not uncommon, right? I mean, after this, when you go tea break, you're not going to remember what I'm going to tell you because it's lecture-based, right? It's not going to work, right? So that's always the first problem. The second problem is that, hey, I can remember, but, you know, I don't think I'm made to do this. I don't think I'm up for it, right? So this is where it is. And then the third one is, hey, I can remember. Okay, I think I'm up to this, but I really don't know how to apply, you know, what their talk is about. It's theory, concepts, you know, AI and all those other things. I don't really know how to apply. How does me as a person apply it from my role in an organization? So you have three problems, right? And because of these three things, you have no business results. Now, underlying these three feedbacks are these three problems. So these are the underlying issues. So it's a memory issue, it's a confidence issue, it's a practice issue, and obviously no business results. So what the outcome that you want at the end of the day, if you want to see business results, is these three things. The first thing you want is cognitive retention, right? You want the person to be able to remember what they have learned. So if they can't remember, let's not even talk about application. Now, what are the stats of a general lecture-based and to a certain extent, general e-learning-based retention rate after 2 weeks? What's the statistics? Anyone know? What's the retention rate? 10%? 5%? After 2 weeks, 2 to 7%. So imagine you only remember 2 to 7% of whatever you remembered here at this conference, right? After 2 weeks, right? Some of you will be screaming, I want my money back, right? No. So that's the first challenge, cognitive retention. Now, how do you do that, right? How do you do that? Now, the second challenge is what we call conviction retention. Do they have the conviction that they can do it? Just because you remember, but if I can't, I don't think that I can do it, then that's another issue altogether, right? And of course, the third and most importantly, you must have conduct retention. You must be able to retain the conduct because real learning is this, right? Real learning doesn't stop at what I call information download. Now, if you watch videos, you do a lot of reading, and you hear lectures, what you're merely doing is information download. You may understand it, but at a learning level, that's what we call awareness, right? How do you know you have learned something? When you're able to apply it in different contexts. Well, so learning, there's two, content and context. So the easiest way, if it's the content and the context within the same part, you're able to apply it, so you know that you learned something. But you're able to apply the content in different contexts, then you know that you've really learned it. Of course, the highest level is when you're able to teach it back. Right now, and you need all these three to get business results. You need all these three to get business results. And gamification, we found, is the only way that we can use all three in it together. Now, if you miss any one of this, then based on our experience, you will not get the type of business results that you want. So, in order to resolve this, we need a gamification approach that is both what I call high touch, so physical or analog, some might call it that, and also high tech, digital, in that sense, because both has its advantages and disadvantages. And I'll share a bit about what we've learned, right? So our company, we design simulations, right, for learning, for corporations, right? So these are some of the board games, some of the stuff that you see, board games, but we also have the digital component, and we use both together, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's now the age of digitalization. We will use a board game if that's the best way to learn, and that's the best way to give business results. And if a board game is not needed, we will use full digital, right? So that's why we talk about convergence. Now, why is that so, right? Now, in terms of cognitive retention, how do you get people to remember, especially adults? Right now, this whole term called pedagogy, right? But if you think about it, the root word is talk about children learning. There's a very big difference between adult learning and children learning, because adults have one very big thing that children doesn't have. What do you wanna guess what it is? Experience, right? So lecture-based works very well when there's a teacher and you need to teach the children because they're absorbing everything. But as I'm talking to you, some of you already disagree. Now, Andrew, I disagree with that. And that's good because that's based on your experience. So you can't teach adults the way you teach. You can't teach an adult the way you teach a child, right? So you can't make it one way, self-directed one way, because that's not going to work, all right? It may work with some, but for most adults, from the clients that we have, it doesn't work, right? So what we found is that you need two things. You need world-class content, and you need feedback. Well, now, when we talk about world-class content, it can be delivered through a high-tech approach, right? See, the brain has very limited memory space, and pretty much like IBO now, you cannot buy memory chips to add on to it. You just have that much, and if it's not worth your time to listen to, so if I'm boring you right now, you're going to shut off, right? You may be here, but you shut off because you're not going to listen to me because it's not worth your time, right? And it's the same with learning. If they feel that, this thing is what I've learned in university, why am I learning this again? So what you need to do is you need to always have world-class content. It needs to be based on research theory and not opinions or stories. And this is where the trainer-led environment is very dangerous, because it's always based on one person's lens and that person's opinion. That opinion may work in that environment, but when you bring it to another environment, the opinion doesn't work because it's not researched, right? Now, the second one is what we call instant feedback, high touch. The ability to get constant feedback, and people do micro corrections. Sounds a bit like your typical mobile game, right? You play an Angry Bird, didn't get it wrong, then it tells you move up a bit, then you try it again, right? Micro corrections to build on learning. Now, this is where I've not seen any AI or any logical decision tree behind an LMS system that's able to beat the human interaction. So this is the case that we always tell the clients, right? In this room, let's say there are about 50 people, right? 50 people. Let's just say about 50 people, and each of us have 10 years of experience. Now, where is the value in this room? Our experience. No amount of digital apps or whatever it is, or board games is able to help you harness that. So when we talk to our clients, we say, like, look, if you got a room of 30 managers, each manager has 10 people inside, 10 years experience, you've got 300 years of experience there. Now, the key to learning how to make your business work is how to unlock that 300 years of experience. Of course, theory would help, but through the feedback systems that you inculcate into gamification systems, that is where it's most important. In fact, most of the clients say that a lot of the feedback from their fellow participants in a simulated environment are much more worth it than the debriefs that they get from the trainers. Obviously, so why? Because they are in the same industry, the same environment, essentially. So using this very basic system, what is the retention rate like, right? So just show you some statistics. It's a Fortune 500 client, 300 plus participants, and okay, after 3 months, this was for customer service simulation across 300 over people, retention rate is at 90%. Retention rate is at 90%. After 5 months, retention rate is close to 80%. Right now. So this solves the first problem. If you cannot remember, you can't even apply. Right? So these are the retention rates. And these are not cherry-picked. These are 300 plus participants across 40 over branches of Fortune 500 financial institution. And this was conducted by them internally, so we had no say on how we could tweak the data. So let's move on the second part, in terms of conviction retention. So all right, I can remember now, but I'm not confident that I can do it. So what do we do, right? Now, for conviction retention, you need two things. You need a live environment to test ideas, right? And you need a safe environment to fail and learn. And what we found that the best environment is high touch, right? So the environment must mimic real work environments as much as possible. And usually we use simulations. Now, so you can use treasure hunting, climbing mountains and such, but we found, and this is based on feedback from clients, it's very hard for them to relate back to the real world. This shovel represents your customer service, charter or whatever. It's very difficult. And most people can't connect it like that, no matter how good you're at in that sense. Okay? So, and second one is ideas are learners' interpretation of theory and application. So, unlike theory, which is usually dry and boring, ideas come from the people. And when it comes from them, they have a high sense of ownership. Right, and you need to make it safe, because when it's safe, the brain will learn best. So when it don't feel safe, the brain is not going to learn at all, right? That's why when there's a dominant boss in a meeting, nobody's going to say anything. And learners are willing to take risks and willing to take risks to fail or to succeed. Yeah. So let me just show you some example of a strategic thinking simulation that we did. So we asked both the participants and also the direct managers in terms of the competencies. The competencies are below. There are 5 competencies. You can see after 2 months with no other interventions, we spent only one day with them. You can see the percentage points went up by quite a fair bit. Right? So you can see that they have the confidence and are able to apply it. Last but not least, we talk about conduct retention. So it's all about using habit building models in your learning systems, right? So this is where it can be both high tech and high touch, right? So basic habit loop, I won't talk too much about it. Basically, there's always a trigger, and then this is how your brain works, right? And you make a decision whether to use habit or to think actively, right? And then you go into action, and then you look for a reward. Now, what we found is that you need to switch from downloading information to habit building in the learning sessions, right? And you build habits that focuses on target behavior, right? You need to have a target behavior, and you move your habit loops towards focusing on that. And here's one thing we learned: don't break habits. It's very hard. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they got this 12-step program. It's very hard. You use what we call replacement therapy, right? You replace it with something. So in the learning, you relate with new things. So for example, in a board-based game, what you can do is this simulation on the board base, it represents years. So what we do is every month, we use it as a habit loop. So you learn, you apply, you get feedback, then you loop again, then you loop again, then you loop again. So how it happens is that as you keep on looping, you're reinforcing the right behaviors, and at the end of the day, you form a new habit. So when we spend 1 to 2 days with our clients, typically we call them habit building sessions as opposed to typical learning sessions. So they use rapid prototyping and rapid iteration in the gamification technique. All right, so new habits can be formed in as little as 1 or 2 days. Now, at the end of the day, let's move to the most important thing, business results. So what type of business results can you get, right? And this will be the last part I'll be talking about. So if you're able to have cognitive retention, conviction retention, conduct retention, by right, you should have business results. So what type of business results we have? All right, so we have a sales simulation with a Fortune 500 company. Their sales, 400 over people, sales increased by 266%. Actual sales numbers, right? They were doing about 57K USD across typical branch. Within 1 month, and we spent 1.5 days with them only, they were doing about 215K USD per branch. Another client of a Fortune 500 company was a customer service simulation. They were top 10 in the region. They want to move to top 3, and you know, when you're already doing 94%, it's very hard to shift the needle. Brought us in, 1.5 days with them, they moved up to 96%, became top 3 in the region, helped them to win 2 regional customer service awards in Hong Kong. So essentially, it's not very difficult, as per se, if you're able to do cognitive retention, conviction retention, and the third one, which I just forgot, all right, sorry. Conduct retention, sorry. Yeah, you're able to get business results. All right? So there are a lot of other results that I can't share due to time, but it's not about whether you use digital or you use physical. The future is all about convergence, because a lot of what the physical can do, the digital cannot do. And a lot of what the digital can do, which is the data and the analytics parts, are those parts which the physical cannot do. And it's all about bringing both together. All right? Thank you.